Folks, welcome into the first SBR betting roundtable of 2018. Happy New Year to you alongside Ian Cameron, Donnie Rightside, Jeff Nadeau. I am Drew Martin. We're going to be hitting on the NFL, college football. We got some Canadian sports, also college basketball, and best bets coming up. So, guys, let's go right around the horn. Introduce yourself. How are you doing out of the gate, sports betting wise, in 2018? We'll start off with Jeff Nadeau, the big man on campus. Find him on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. Jeff, welcome in. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing good, Drew. Starting off the new year with a bang. How about you?
Good, man. Always excited for a new year. Fresh slate. If you had a bad 2017, if not, keep it rolling into the new one. His partner in crime, Donnie Rightside. Find him on Twitter at RightsideVP. He's hot out of 2018 out the gate. Donnie, welcome in, man.
Smoking hot out of the gate 2018 with a pristine record of 0-0. So we look to have a nice 2018 season. NFL playoffs on deck. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Transitioning also to college basketball. What a time to be alive. New year, new me, Drew.
2018. Sounds good. Hey, Ian Cameron. Find him on Twitter at Babano. Ian, welcome in. How are you doing today, buddy?
Doing good. We put our first winning night of the 2018 calendar year on the board last night. We were happy about that. Unfortunately, our New Year's Day was ruined a little bit by Clemson. Thanks for nothing there from them. But other than that, still a very, very good start to the year. Always excited for a new year, new opportunities. I've mentioned it on many other shows and on Twitter. We're hoping this is a big time year in terms of a progression year for the sports betting industry as a whole. The New Jersey case is the first and foremost element to that, and I think we're going to have good news on the horizon on that front in the weeks and months to come.
Great point, Ian. It should be a big year for sports betting in general, especially in America. Guys, we're going to be hitting NFL, college football, college basketball like we were talking about. Let's start off with the big boys. It is NFL playoff week. We also got the national championship week. So a big week in football. But let's start off with Mr. NFL himself. Donnie, this time of year, you've been able to beat this sharp market of the NFL year in, year out. What are you looking to bet coming into the playoffs? How are you looking to kind of go at the other side of the counter?
Yeah, styles make fights. I mean, when you look throughout the NFL season, it's the same as every season. You could probably ask Jeff, Ian, even yourself, Drew, of how you bet certain times of the year, opening to the season, midway through the season, heading down the season, who's playing for what, we have to cap. Because, week 5 and 6, everybody still thinks you're going to make the playoffs. Even if you're 0-5 at that point, nobody's saying, let's get a look-see at some of the quarterbacks there. Case in point, just look on this past Sunday. If you had the Buffalo Bills in that game, how much did you love David Fales coming in the second drive of the game? Pretty much cemented a victory for you if you were betting the Buffalo Bills only -2.5 in that game. Much different stories we enter in here. There's a couple key caveats that you want to take a look at when you enter into the playoffs. One of the hugest advantages you're going to have is not really this week so much, is next week. But the better teams coming off the bye, where you're coming into a win-all game this week. You're going to put your blood, sweat, and tears, your best plays out there on video. And then if you win, you're going to have to go play a team that's rested and ready. A couple key games that we'll get into today that are going to have some of those components. The Rams rested their players. Kansas City rested their players. Jacksonville did not rest their players. So same thing with the Carolina Panthers. We'll see as it goes in, but looking at it differently now, you have to transition. Week 16, week 17, week 15, you're betting in the NFL. Completely different, folks, betting the NFL wildcard round.
No, great points. I didn't even think of that, Donnie. I mean, Jeff, do you have any different approach going into the NFL playoffs rather than, week 15, 16, 17?
I can't say I do. I mean, I just try to find the matchup that best suits what I look for. I mean, I think you can kind of maybe pile on a little bit, maybe to that team that maybe doesn't belong in the playoffs. To me this year, I think it's the Tennessee Titans. Again, I mean, they made it in, but I mean, they made it in by the skin of their teeth. Their manager or their coach, I mean, is still, from what I've seen, on the chopping block. I think that's a lot of pressure. You got to go on the road to a really tough atmosphere and play a good football team. But again, it's not about who wins the game for us. It's about who covers the number. They're almost getting double digits. I think they're the weakest team in the playoffs. We'll see. But yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what Donnie said. I mean, maybe trying to build off, a short week or something like that, and kind of just find that situation that works. But yeah, I would maybe look to attack a team maybe that you think doesn't belong, and that team might be the Tennessee Titans this year.
Yeah, and looking at SBR odds right now, we got Tennessee traveling to Kansas City. It's actually the first playoff game of this weekend. I mean, Bookmaker has it as high as 9 right now. Ian, anything to add on to what Donnie and Big Man just said about changing your philosophy, possibly going into NFL playoff betting?
Yeah, when it comes to the wild card round, I mean, matchups are first and foremost. You want to know how people are doing in terms of stopping the run, running the football, pass for defense versus pass offense. Those usual elements that I look at for, the regular season, those are even highlighted even more. I think the kind of quality of opposition you've beaten during the season matters a little bit. Have you beaten teams that are in the postseason during the regular season? That's something I like to look at. I want to be on teams that have been battle tested and have met those challenges in terms of facing good competition during the regular season. That's sometimes a little bit of a harbinger of things to come in the playoffs. So being able to beat some good teams during the regular season, something I like to focus on. Momentum as well. That's definitely something I take into account. Was a team red hot going into the playoffs? Those are sometimes the dangerous teams going into at the end of the regular season. If they were red hot, is that could continue going into the playoffs. I like sometimes riding those teams that just have to fight and scrap and claw their way to get in the playoffs. They could end up being teams that make some noise, maybe not win games, but cover point spreads, because usually they're going to be catching points in a lot of circumstances. Those teams that really had to dig in deep and dig in hard down the stretch of the regular season to get in. So momentum's one thing, matchups certainly another thing, and again, quality of competition you've beaten. This time of year, I want to look at teams that have beaten good, solid teams that are in the postseason chase. If I'm going to be looking at back teams here in the NFL playoffs starting this weekend.
Donnie, anything else you want to throw out overall betting philosophy about going into the NFL playoffs before we break down each matchup?
Yeah, the interesting thing is when you're capping a football game, and again, this weekend is kind of interesting from when you bet past wild card weekends, and everybody could probably tell you the same difference there. Most of these lines in wild card weekend are usually closer together because these are all four of these, excuse me, all 4 games here. Both of these teams pretty much evenly matched overall. There's not one game that you look at and say this game is an absolute smoke show, 21-point victory. Most of these teams are in the playoffs because they can play good football and play good football on the defensive end. Not turn the football over and have some playmakers out there. There's not a lot of discrepancy. A lot of times you get like a 4.5 or a 3.5 or a 3 wild card weekend. It looks like the road teams are really getting disrespected here. But on the counterpoint of that, it's so hard to win on the road in the playoffs. When you look at, going forward and people getting into the Hall of Fame and the quarterbacks that you look at, most of those quarterbacks win a lot of those playoff football games at home because you're the better overall team and it's hard to win on the road as is. Going on the road and being almost a double-digit underdog, some of these guys, that's going to be a hard feat to pull off here. That's the one most shocking thing I'm seeing on Wild Card Weekend. Not a lot of spreads respecting the road teams here.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, just the first game that we're going to break down here, Saturday afternoon, 4:25 Eastern start, 4:35 Eastern start. We got Tennessee, Kansas City. We mentioned it here. Tennessee catching as high as 9 at Bookmaker, Bet Online 8.5, pretty much across the board everywhere else. Intertop's showing a 9 as well on SBR odds right now. And guys, when you look at Tennessee, what they've been outscored on the season from a points per game standpoint, 21 points for, 22 points against, yet they go 9-7, squeak into the playoffs, 8-7 ATS on SBR odds right now. Is this a game where you feel comfortable laying it with the Chiefs? I guess you can find an 8.5 right now, or do you feel more comfortable catching the 9? Donnie, I'll come right back at you. How are you looking to bet this game?
I mean, honestly, like when you watch Tennessee play football, it's not a lot of explosion out there. They have a mobile quarterback, a nice, powerful offensive line, good running back in Henry, and capable wide receivers. But if you watch the wide receivers over the past couple weeks, dropping just about everything, not making plays out there, their defense is okay. But when you look at Andy Reid, the MO of the Kansas City Chiefs, they're all about being in the game. And what I mean by that is Kansas City's not the type of team that says, we're going to step on you. We're going to go up 7-0. And we're going to run play action on our own 25-yard line and try to hit deep shots to Tyreek Hill. It's almost as if you score on Kansas City, they open it up and Alex Smith plays a little bit more fluidly. If they go up and it's 0-0, or excuse me, if they go 0-0 in the first quarter, up 3-0 in the first quarter, it's almost like they take a deep breath and say, all right, let's just move the sticks here and see what happens, as opposed to being aggressive. Tennessee, I think, can stick around in this ball game. I don't know if Tennessee can win because, again, Arrowhead, we all know, fellas, It's hard to win at Kansas City. It's a great home field advantage. Not going to be frigid conditions out there, but I think both of these teams match up relatively well in styles of what they like to play. You're not going to see Kansas City probably run a lot of up-tempo, take a lot of deep shots. I think they're going to play within themselves. They are rested and ready, and there's something to be said about Andy Reid coming off the bye. He's been in the playoffs multiple times. Andy Reid is a very good round one NFL playoff coach. That's going to balance into this as well. But again, you're looking at 9 with Kansas City. The first inclination of this game says, I can't lay 9 with Kansas City, can I? That's just the feeling I get.
Yeah, I mean, at Babano, do you agree with that as far as laying 9 in a playoff game? It does seem a little steep, no?
It is a little steep. My option and the thing I am going to do is put Kansas City in some kind of 2-team 6-point teaser. I mean, that's definitely something I'm interested in doing. Maybe I'll do it with the Rams. Maybe I'll do a nice little Saturday 2-team teaser, Chiefs and Rams, because I do side with both of those teams finding a way to win the game straight up.
No. In the NFL, isn't it an all right bet?
In the playoffs, I am much more of a teaser person than the regular season. I think because in the playoffs, you've got tougher matchups, tighter lines. This is the opportunity if you can. And again, if you're getting teasers, if you're doing reasonable teasers, like Kansas City and the Rams, for instance, would be reasonable. You would get Kansas City down to -2. You would get the Rams down to -0.5. Pick them -0.5 in that range. Perfect type of scenario with both of those teams for putting them on a teaser on the Saturday card. But going back to this Chiefs game, I do think it's a little steep. The one problem I have with Tennessee is this offense has regressed. It's not progressed. I've said it for weeks on this show. You've got 2 coaches that are completely out of it when it comes to trying to innovate offensive football in 2017 when it comes to Mike Mularkey and Terry Robisky, who failed miserably in his one little mini stint as a head coach. He's been a disaster here as an offensive coordinator this season. The play calling has been bad. We've seen no development from Marcus Mariota. We've seen a guy go from a very solid year last year to now more interceptions thrown than touchdowns this season. That's not a good sign whatsoever. Alex Smith, say what you will, he's not going to wow you in a lot of games, but 67% completions for the season, 26 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. He's protected the football. He's not making those critical mistakes with his decision making that Marcus Mariota's had, which I still say a lot of it is to the coaching, the porous coaching that he's receiving on this Tennessee team. So I just don't know where the points are going to come from Tennessee. They're going to have to go on a road in a tough environment. The Chiefs defense has been a little susceptible, a little vulnerable at times. I'm just not sure Tennessee is the type of team that's capable of exploiting that. I think Kansas City wins the game. I'm like Donnie. I'm not in love with or comfortable laying 8.5, 9. But Chiefs in a teaser in that form makes a little bit of sense to me.
And Big Man, do you have anything to add? Especially, Babano brings up Marcus Mariota, and he has taken a little bit of heat, or the coaches. But hey, they find themselves in the playoffs. So are you looking to bet on them and catch these points, or is it a little too pricey for you?
Yeah, I mean that's the problem, Drew. The coaching. That's the one concern you have here with Malarkey. It's just a little too conservative. He's a little too boring. But I will say this. I mean, you're laying almost double digits here with a Chiefs defense that's among the worst in the NFL. I mean, they're 28th in the league in total defense. I mean, they're just not very good on that side of the ball anymore. And you also have a Titans defense that's been pretty good against a run over most of the season. You got to think Kareem Hunt will have a little bit more trouble. And when you make Alex Smith be the guy, it's not ideal for that team. I agree with the guys. I do, like I said, think Tennessee's the worst or the most qualified, I guess, team to be in the playoffs. But again, this is a lot of points. I guess their defense is decent. If they can stop the run and kind of move the football through the run game, I think they can hang around here. Not in love with this game, but get anything over like that 8-9, I would lean towards the Titans. I think
one
it's
thing
like
that Ian was bringing.
17 type of game, something like that.
One thing that Ian was bringing up, which I do like, I mean, isn't that been like a tale of 3 seasons for the Kansas City Chiefs, opening up, looking like the best team in the NFL, out of nowhere dropping 6 of 7, then riding the ship with 4 straight nice victories. I mean, say what you want, Oakland's still going to play hard. It's still going to be a division game. They know each other. They pick up the win at home, and a really impressive game. I mean, nobody wanted to face the Chargers in the playoffs. They had a de facto playoff game already at Arrowhead, and the Chiefs were markedly better than the Chargers in that game, then pulling off the win against a depleted Miami team, but still beating them up pretty good. And then going into Denver last week with your backups in a game that didn't matter in a rivalry game, pulling out the victory. There's a little bit something to be said from that. So if you're playing that angle saying, I want a football team playing good football heading into the playoffs, this team's playing some pretty good football right now.
And a little bit of a
Donnie,
home road split, too with Kansas City defensively. They've had some horrible showings on the road defensively. At home, this has actually been a better defense. I mean, their points per game down significantly and in home games compared to on the road. Yards numbers down as well. So this has been a good defense, at least a solid defense at Arrowhead Stadium. It's been on the road that they've had problems, and that's going to be the concern if the Chiefs advance next weekend into the divisional round, because their road defense has been chewed up and spit out, especially by some good offenses. That's why I still view Kansas City as a team that can win this football game, but I'm not sure they get past the divisional round.
Donnie, you bring up playing good football down the stretch. Would you carry that over to the Titans, who they're 5-1, their last 6 ATS? Does that matter going into this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at matchups and what they're playing with, because the good point about Tennessee here is if you're gambling, we don't really care technically who wins the football game. Would it be nice if they won, money line ahead of the money line? Sure thing. I mean, they're getting close to 10, so you want to say, styles make fights and how they're going to attack. It's one of those teams like playing Tennessee's that really up-tempo type style with a lot of firepower. Tennessee might be in a little bit of trouble, but heading down the stretch there, I mean, they were battle tested. I mean, I say what you want about Arizona. I was down on them all year. They almost got their 8.5 win total at the end of the year. Bruce Arians did an unbelievable job and a nice win picking up that victory in Seattle. But going to Arizona beat a lot of good football teams at home there. Then you're playing at San Francisco with Jimmy G, one of the hottest football teams on the planet. You're coming home in a must-win situation. You battle the LA Rams, one of the best teams in the NFL, and then you play the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the best defenses out there. They're not quote-unquote hot coming into the game, but it's not as if they're just taking cream puffs out there and getting slaughtered and, oh my God, how are we going to get through this game? They did play some good football teams down the stretch, so they're ready, which also begs the question is, if you're looking at Kansas City, who played good football down the stretch and got rested, that's not what Tennessee had to do. Tennessee was in de facto playoff games heading down the stretch. How much do they have left in the tank now going on the road to play Kansas City at this point?
Well, guys, going from 2 teams that are pretty hot down the stretch, both straight up and ATS wise, let's move on to Atlanta, LA. We got the Falcons, who dropped 3 of their last 4 ATS, and we also got the LA Rams, 3 of their last 4 straight up, actually 2 and 2 straight up. 3 of their last 4 ATS, all losses. So 2 teams not as hot going into the playoffs. Do you change your approach in this game, big man?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I think a lot of people will look towards the Rams here for good reason. They've had a great season. I think we all have seen what they've done. It's been impressive. Gurley's been great. Goff's kind of become a decent quarterback. But I got to be honest, I like the Atlanta Falcons here in this game. I think they can win the game. Frankly, I think this is a good spot for them. Don't have to travel to any cold weather spots. And look, we have to realize that the Rams defense isn't very good. I mean, the rush defense is poor. They're among, like Kansas City, the worst in the NFL. And I just think, for me, the Rams are 1 year away. Would it surprise me if they win and cover and roll here? No. But I just think they're a team just kind of coming into the playoffs. There's not a lot I look at as far as statistical stuff here. I just have a feel in this game. I think Atlanta will come to play in this game defensively. I think they'll finally let it roll kind of on the offensive end. Sarkisian, it's time to come and perform here. Matt Ryan, I like, as always, he doesn't have to go and play in cold weather here. It's not like there's going to be a huge home field advantage here for the Rams. There'll be good fans there, but it's not going to be boisterous or anything. I just think the Rams are 1 year away, in my opinion. But I'm sure the other guys can give a better breakdown than I can here.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, with Atlanta going across country here, is that worked into your handicap? And what are you thinking, laying it or taking the points?
There's only one concern I have here for the LA Rams, and that's obviously they've never been here before. Sean McVay's never been here before. Jared Goff's never been here before. Todd Gurley's never been here before in a postseason game. I still think the LA Rams have it in them to win this football game. They're going to be someone I use in a teaser, the LA Rams. Like I said, with Kansas City, that's what I'm looking at for Saturday. I think they win this football game. Am I comfortable laying 6.5? No, because you are still talking about the Atlanta Falcons, team that was in the Super Bowl last year, that's had a plethora of playoff games under Matt Ryan, the quarterback. this slew of core members that they've had of this team, the Julio Joneses, Devontae Freemans, go on down the list, Dan Quinn, the coach. They've been there, done that in the postseason before. They've got a vast experience edge. But there are situations I've seen, especially in recent years, where experience doesn't always win out over talent. And I think the LA Rams do have a serious amount of talent. And I think they're going to be able to move the football on this Atlanta team. I do not see Atlanta's defense completely slowing down or shutting down Jared Goff in the passing game. Todd Gurley, who's been able to just make plays in the screen game and running the football against anybody. On the flip side, though, Big Man brought up concerns about the Rams defense. And there are some concerns. This Rams defense was good at times. At times, though, they allowed I don't think their pass rush was quite as good at times. They were pretty good up front at times, but stopping the run sometimes was in and out for them. Pass rush was not always consistent for them. The only concern I have with Atlanta is, can they overcome Steve Sarkisian calling their plays? Because sometimes it just drives you nuts. You want to pound your head against the wall with some of the play calls that Steve Sarkisian makes, but there's still an immense amount of talent offensively on this Atlanta Falcons team. That's going to test this LA Rams defense here. Last year, by the way, these teams played. It was 42-14 Atlanta, yet the Rams actually outgained the Falcons in that game. It was a weird game. Jared Goff was in his first year, first few starts. He was a turnover machine in that game. He was just absolutely dreadful. You've got to take that result with a grain of salt. The one thing I am going to say is I think we get a similar type of game to that one in terms of points scored. This is the one playoff game I'm fairly comfortable betting over the total. When you look at it, 48.5. I've been riding this LA Rams team over the total consistently down the stretch of the regular season. It's been on my NFL card repeatedly. It was on it against Philly. It was on it against Seattle. The Tennessee game, I liked over the total as well as a personal play. They can score, but I think they're also going to have at least a little bit of trouble trying to defend this still vaunted Atlanta offense, play calling aside. So I like the over more than anything, and I'd put the Rams in a teaser. That's the way I'm looking in this game.
Donnie, what is Steve Sarkisian drinking before games? What's he doing with this play calling here? And how are you looking to attack Dirty Birds and Rams, man?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, it comes into one of those folds where you have, San Francisco, not San Francisco, the Los Angeles Rams sitting back there, taking a professional approach to the playoffs and saying, you know what? We're good enough right now. We don't have to go out here and, quote unquote, stay hot for a win to get in the playoffs versus the division rivals, San Francisco 49ers. They took one on the chin last week, and nobody cared because the Stars didn't play. They knew exactly what was setting up the following week, and they used this bye week, what they used it as a bye week, to their advantage. Why? Because if you're going to match up with some of these football teams, take a look at the Atlanta Falcons. I like the way they played down the stretch. Their defense has shown up. Look at the last 4 games, rushing on the ground defensive statistics. 50 yards, 84, 86, and 87. Keeping teams relatively in line there because you're going to need to do that when you're going to face Todd Gurley. But coming down the stretch with Atlanta is the same thing. We're going to use rest and who's not rested. Atlanta was in de facto playoff mode for the last 6 to 7 games already. Minnesota, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina. Last week, you had to be in a win and get in scenario. You put it out all on the line at home. You take a deep breath. Now you got to get on the plane. You got to go out to the West Coast versus a rested and ready team where you know that offensive scheme is going to come out there. I like the Atlanta Falcons on turf. They're built for turf. They're built coming off the edge with their smaller pass rushers who are built on speed. Now you're going to play a grass against a big mauling offensive line with Todd Gurley coming downhill and Sean McVay's offensive scheme that has done damage to just about everybody they played. Look at them coming down the stretch. Easy winner on the road at Arizona. The Philadelphia Eagles game does show up at 43-35, but let's remember a late touchdown in that football game, in the last minute or last couple seconds when that game was really intact. Really in line in the fourth quarter for a tough one. Blew out Seattle. Played well at Tennessee when Tennessee absolutely had to win that football game. Both of these teams playing really good heading down the stretch. But again, the key caveat here is one team is rested and ready for this one when the other one has had no rest and literally playing playoff game after playoff game and playing close games down the stretch here.
Yeah, and the NFL didn't do him any favors with them playing on Saturday instead of Sunday, so one less extra day of prep. Do you think that has something to do with what the opener at 5 now bet up to 6.5 pretty much across the board, Donnie?
Yeah, no, I agreed with the line movement there. I mean, you're getting up, 6.5 pretty much across the board. CG Technology sitting at -6, -120. But the line opened up at Pinnacle at 5, Chris at 4.5. And you see the respect that the Rams are getting right off the bat. And I agree with it. But the one thing, if you're betting from an Atlanta side here, the one thing that gives Atlanta trouble all year, like when they match up against the Vikings, you have like a Xavier Rhodes that can at least shadow or play up against Julio Jones. You have to shut him down, no, but you just can't have Julio Jones run wild. The one thing that, the Rams don't have, they have a very good front four. They're going to get pressure regardless. But Julio Jones in those matchups in the secondary, you're going to have to pay a lot of attention. Bracket coverage, double coverage, which is going to leave wide open, Mohamed Sanu out there. They have two very capable running backs, as we know, with Coleman and Freeman back there. But matching up, that is your advantage. If you're taking Atlanta in this situation, you hope they get a pass rush, which they can. I mean, they do have some fast defensive ends. But the one key advantage you have is Julio Jones should get his. So if you get into a track meet, you're right. Atlanta should be able to trade points. But overall, talent-wise, scheme-wise, I still like the Rams in this one.
And I want to mention the Kayvon Webster injury is a big deal for the LA Rams, too, in this matchup from a secondary perspective. They're going to miss that guy that's not the most sturdy pass defense by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been a really good player for them. 34 tackles on the season for him out of that secondary, so they rely on Kayvon Webster a lot. There's going to have to be some shifting now going on in that Ram secondary when you're facing these plethora of receivers that Atlanta can throw at you. So that's going to be something that Sean McVay's got to do a little bit of tinkering there in that back seven for the LA Rams, trying to go up against this vaunted Atlanta passing attack on Saturday.
All right, guys, moving on to the Sunday slate. We got Buffalo and Jacksonville kicking off 1:05 Eastern time. Looks like Buffalo catching 9 or Jacksonville laying 8. Make sure to shop around some differing opinion on this game on SBR odds right now. The lowest total of Wildcard weekend sitting at 39.5. Come right back at you at Babano. How you looking to bet the Bills and Jags?
Well, it's simple. I'm not laying this price with Jacksonville and Blake Bortles in his first ever playoff spot, and a quarterback that did not play his best football in the last few games of the season. If you saw the way it was going for him against Tennessee in that regular season finale, I mean, he was pretty much disaster area for most of that football game. So this is a guy that he's been a polarizing topic of discussion over the years. Blake Bortles, just in terms of how disappointing largely he's been. Went through a situation where, he had a couple of good games midway through the season. Really, Jacksonville, how are they going to win this game and potentially cover this number, even though I think they're going to be in tough trying to do that? They're going to have to run the football, going to have to play that great defense, which they can. They're actually a little bit vulnerable against the run. Now, the question from a Buffalo perspective, and it's the question that everybody's asking, everybody's wondering about, how healthy is LaShawn McCoy going to be on Sunday for this football game? Because if he's limited and he's got a bad wheel out there and he's not able to put any sort of acceleration or stick his foot into the ground and really cut upfield and make little juke moves, which is something that's a big part of his repertoire and style running the football, that's a problem for Buffalo. If you're a one-dimensional offense with Tyrod Taylor and a suspect passing attack, a suspect pass protection, a weakened and limited group of receivers, that's going to be a little bit of an issue for Buffalo. So LaShawn McCoy's health is a massive, massive factor, massive going into this football game. I can't say it enough. That being said, Jacksonville laying this price, I'm not doing it. I'd hold my nose and take Buffalo at this number. It's the only way I can bet it. There are concerns again. I'm worried for this Buffalo offense if McCoy does not suit up. But at this number, at this price, it's the Bills or pass. I'm not trusting Doug Marrone, Blake Bortles in particular, and this Jacksonville team that's never been here before in this kind of spot laying this kind of price.
Big man, anything to add to that in this game in North Florida?
Well, I mean, LaShawn McCoy's from Harrisburg. I might have to get in touch with a girl I used to know that smashed him. Maybe I can get some information for you guys on if he's playing or not. Maybe I can help you out here. But I agree. In a way, if LaShawn McCoy doesn't play, I'm going to agree with what Donnie's going to say because I know he's going to say it. Ian kind of mentioned as well. It's hard to envision if McCoy doesn't play that Buffalo could win, let alone cover. I mean, he is their offense. And for him, the injury that he has is poor just because he is so reliant on cuts and the way he, jukes and does that sort of thing. We saw that in Philadelphia for many years. He's a little bit more inclined to, get bothered from injuries due to the fact of all that stuff. But I kind of like the under. I know, you look at this total, it's pretty low, but I mean, I don't see a whole hell of a lot of scoring in this game. I mean, the Jags have made it clear with no real feasible run game lately. It's been difficult. As long as Blake Bortles is set, you give him a couple pick sixes or primo field position, I think this game will stay under. I don't know that I trust Tyrod Taylor completely to move the ball without McCoy. Again, this is very reliant on McCoy. If McCoy plays, then I think a lot of our predictions won't be as strong. But I look under. One defense that's pretty good for the most part. I think the Bills are a little overrated on defense. They're actually among the bottom 7 in the league. So yeah, their defense is really taking a hit. You would think it would have been as good, if not better, with McDermott coming in. But overall, I'm going to lean under here. I think this is kind of a boring punt fest. Where both offenses kind of feel each other out early. And if McCoy doesn't play, I definitely like the under.
Yeah, their pass
Donnie,
rush is
anything
the
to
big
add?
issue with the Bills. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Donnie,
we're
anything
taking.
to add?
I like this football. Yeah, I like this football game to take a look at it. You're right. I mean, if you're looking at the Buffalo Bills here, I've been on with Gabe a lot, and I know Gabe likes Buffalo, and I get it. I mean, look, they're in the playoffs. They're a good football team. You don't just make the playoffs when you're not a good football team. But all year long, every single breakdown with the Buffalo Bills on offense is this: if I can just get Tyrod Taylor to make a couple plays with his feet, 3rd and 6 conversion, please give me Shady McCoy 25 to 30 carries. Well, I mean, you're going to get all the good smoke signals out of Buffalo. Shady's an optimistic guy. He is a fast healer. But let's be real about this. He hurt his ankle enough to get carted off with x-rays where you're on crutches after the game, and you're going to play a week later against a really good defensive football team when your offense is built around Shady McCoy. So you say, okay, Tyrod Taylor can win the football game. Well, let's go to their next running back. Their next leading running back is what, like Mike Tolbert, with like 300 yards on the season, who's slow as a plug against one of the fastest linebacking cores and defensive lines out there. So then you say, okay, well, how are we going to attack Jacksonville's defense? Well, Jacksonville has two of the best corner, maybe the best corner tandem in the NFL. And now you're going to say who on Buffalo is going to catch passes against that? Because when you break the game down, and I know we sometimes like to live in the past also, like Buffalo's this some great defense that Jeff even brings up there saying there are some leaks in it. Starting with the New Orleans game, or excuse me, before that, the New York Jets, not the greatest offense in the world, 194 on the ground. The New Orleans Saints went into Buffalo and ran for 298 yards on the ground. 191 for the New England Patriots. And they ran for 193 in the last game for the New England Patriots. All the love, I don't like Blake Bortles that much as a quarterback. He played very well through most of the year above his head and is coming back a little bit. But if you're saying to yourself, you don't want Blake Bortles to beat you as Jacksonville, what better team to play than the Buffalo Bills on defense when you can ram it right down their neck? The problem with this football game is 9 a lot of points. Yes, it is. But when I'm optimistically looking to bet the Buffalo Bills, you can't lean on their defense, right? It's a home game for Jacksonville where they've shown the propensity to drill teams at home. This is a team that only made one mistake last week, to me, was playing their starters. If they were rested for this ball game, this line should be even higher. But the fact that Jacksonville didn't come in quote-unquote hot might be bringing it down a little bit. But if you're betting this football game from a Buffalo perspective, ask me this. Forget about scoring points for the Buffalo Bills. How are they getting first downs in this game?
The Bills
Brady
do have
in
the
the
better
chat
coach.
box
They have
saying,
the
"Go,
better,
Donnie, go."
the better brain. They have the better brain on the sideline. I will say that for Buffalo. They do have that going for them. Will it matter in the end? We'll see. But yeah, I mean, to me, Buffalo's not winning this game if McCoy's limited or can't play. That's really all there is to it. But to me, there's better things to do with my money than lay 9 with Blake Bortles in his first.
It's a lot.
playoff
You're right.
game.
It's
Sorry,
a lot
there's
of
better
points.
things.
It's looking to bet the
Yep.
Jacksonville Jaguars. I do
Yep.
agree. But, I mean, it's 4 quarters game. It's not going to be an aerial show. You know, Jacksonville holding back some wide receivers. They should be a little bit more in tune in this game. But again, I just like to get off that mantra, like Buffalo plays great defense. They don't play great defense.
No.
They actually play right into the hands of what Jacksonville's going to do. Jacksonville's going to line up that big, bad offensive line and run their 3 running backs right downhill. And the problem is, if Jacksonville gets out to a 3 or 6-0 lead, can Tyrod Taylor make a play or two? Sure, he's an athletic quarterback. He's an NFL guy. But the Buffalo Bills haven't even thrown for over 264 yards on the season. Look at their last couple of games. Like, you know, if you're looking, you could take the Indianapolis game out, but against New England, against, 85 yards in the air, Miami 212. And also, if you're saying playing hot down the stretch, who exactly did Buffalo beat down the stretch? You played a pillow fight in the snow with Indianapolis. You beat Miami, who checked out twice. One game had David Fales out there. We absolutely had the win. Where are the wins at? You got bombed by New England 23-3, and then you got bombed by him again 37-16. It was a nice win at Kansas City. I get it, but I'm just looking for points, and the way you can exploit Jacksonville at home, you better have a super athletic quarterback, which he's athletic, but you need some outlets out there that are going to be able to get deep and hit big passes. I just don't see it happening here from that perspective.
And it's the number 1 pass defense, Jacksonville. Great secondary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Donnie, I mean,
That's why McCoy is a vital piece to this game. Vital, yep.
You bring up the Buffalo defense, Donnie. Aspire in the live chat here is saying they could play twice and still stay under. But do you lean towards the over?
I mean, yeah, it's hard to lean towards the under. I mean, the over in the playoffs. As we see down the stretch, I talk a lot about those New Orleans games and the AFC or the NFC South, which tends to be higher scoring. But as you get into playoff games, always the mantra is first downs mean more than touchdowns because you're not taking shots in these games, holding the ball, not turning it over. And you'll see guys even we yell in the preseason or the regular season when it's fourth and 1 from the 36, why they don't kick the field goal. In the playoff game type situations, every yard it seems like is monumental. They're going to be punting the football. And the one thing I also want to get out of the way as well, which there's some dispelling of information out here that for some reason it's going to be really bad weather in Jacksonville. It's cold this time of year. The game on Saturday or Sunday that's going to be played is 62 degrees is what they're anticipating. The normal average high in Jacksonville for the month of January is 64. So Buffalo's not bringing freezing cold weather, and they like to play in cold weather. It's normal temperature down there on Sunday. So take that one out of the equation as well.
Guys, great breakdown. We got 60 seconds with Cameron coming up. College basketball, college football, and best bets right around the corner. If you're liking the content, please give us a thumbs up, the like button. It helps us out a lot. Guys, let's move on to the last game here. NFC South matchup, Carolina, New Orleans. We got Bookmaker just moving to 49 on the total right now, getting hit towards the over. Looks like 6.5 or 7 across the board. So this is a really important matchup to be shopping around. Use SBR odds for the most current odds on this game. Big man, you want to start us off real quick? Carolina, New Orleans?
Yeah, I don't have a ton on this game. This is probably the one I just don't have a huge lean on. Over, probably. I mean, 5 or 6 have gone over between these two teams. You have to remember, I mean, it's in New Orleans, in the Dome. Drew Brees is going to be firing away as they normally do. The question is, do we trust? I mean, is Carolina's pass defense good enough? I know the front seven's good and, the linebackers and everything like that, but you still got to wonder about their defense. They've had some in and out players in and out, Kurt Coleman, guys like that. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is a 31, 28 type of game. I just think it's a high scoring game. Carolina will go all out. Cam Newton's got to make some plays at some point, but as many people would say, he is a little flaky at times. I don't have a huge opinion on this game. I'm gonna let Donnie and Ian go at this one.
All right. Well, Ian, you got anything on what Carolina, New Orleans here?
Yeah, I was initially early in the week looking to make a case over the total, but the more, because I just recently saw Tampa Bay move the ball up and down the field against Carolina in a game. And I saw Tampa Bay move the ball up and down the field against New Orleans last week. However, red zone defense, the one thing Carolina did against Tampa is they kept shutting out Tampa in the red zone. And if you're going to get over this kind of total, you're going to need red zone efficiency. You're going to need teams turning field goals into touchdowns and putting sevens on the board instead of settling for threes. So that's my one concern. It has been an over series. There's no question. I mean, you look at both games this year over the total. Between the Saints and the Panthers, 47, 52 points in the two games. So I lean over. I don't love it as much as I did because one thing we saw from Carolina is their defense in the red zone pretty good. That's going to be the concern. And it is a high number, but I'd still try to make a case because this New Orleans defense to me is getting worse, not better. As the season's gone on. That's a big time concern. I did not like the way the Bucs went up and down against that Saints team last week. That's a concern. The injuries have started to mount just a little bit more on the defensive side of the football. And Carolina's defense, I'm telling you what, their weakness is the secondary. The one thing that is giving me a little bit of pause, too, in terms of this over is what's the status going into this game going to be for Thomas? We know Michael Thomas has been banged up a little bit. Is he going to play for the Saints? They're going to need him out there on that field to try to attack what I think is a vulnerable Carolina secondary. That's the weak part of that team defensively. I mean, their linebacking core is as good as it gets. Their front four, the defensive front solid. That secondary, you can make some plays against them. So there is potential for Drew Brees to do that. I'm going to do some more digging. I'm trying to make a case over the total. But, Carolina, the last time I bet them over the total against Tampa, I thought I had it. I mean, Tampa was moving up and down the field, and they just hit a brick wall every time they got into the red zone in that football game. That's my one little fear about looking over the total. I think the Saints advance too in this game, but am I comfortable again in this kind of scenario laying 6.5, 7 now across the board? No, but I'm not in love with the Panthers side either.
And Donnie, New Orleans went 2-0 in the matchups this year. Are you factoring that in? I mean, it is a fun matchup in the Big Easy Sunday.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, is there a bigger place or venue to have a playoff game than New Orleans in the Superdome? And New Orleans usually comes correct. I believe the last time they lost a game was to the Philadelphia Eagles back in the Rich Kotite era when we still had Eric Allen, Randall Cunningham, and Reggie White. So when you're talking about teams that play well and play well at home in big spots, that's the New Orleans Saints. And I expect much of the same this weekend. I think they overall are a better team. There's a great angle in this game that you want to take a look at also, because Ian is right. When you just look, I mean, when you say it's dome, it's perfect weather, it's Drew Brees, doesn't it always lend itself to be over? But another factor you want to look at, both of these teams 11-5 coming in and matching up in Wild Card weekend. They're elite football teams, but also keep in mind both of these coaching staffs know each other from the past. But this is the third time they're going to match up in the same season. There's nothing that's going to be a trick like, oh my goodness, they ran the running back into the flat and the wide receiver went deep on a wheel route. We never saw that before. These guys have scouted each other so much. They're going to play for the third time. So not a lot of discrepancies out there. Everybody's going to know their plays. Similar to like an NBA team that's going to match up 6 to 7 times. Eventually you know exactly what they're going to run. You just have to be able to stop it. But also Ian is right in the fact that Carolina Panthers are a little bit susceptible in the secondary versus the New Orleans Saints. But New Orleans is a new New Orleans Saints team. It's not the old Drew Brees team. I'm going to throw for 500 yards to beat you. They're going to lean a lot on their running game with Kamara and also Ingram in this game. And again, it's the third time they've played. 7 is a decent number here. But the fact that I'm worried about here, coming down the stretch, I like the way Carolina played. I like their defense. I like Carolina outdoors much more than I would like them in a dome environment, because I believe their defense lends itself to play well in some windy conditions, colder weather, the front seven, and playing some, nasty football up front. But those conditions won't be available. The thing I worry about in this game for Carolina is, again, when you put your money, don't we all know Drew Brees is going to come to play in here? I can't ever imagine in a big game scenario, oh my God, Drew Brees was absolutely pathetic in that football game. But the one thing on the other side of the football is Cam Newton out there. What happens in the first quarter? We see it a lot. He throws an early interception that gets tipped. New Orleans goes up 7-0, and that crowd is howling down in the Superdome. I don't know if he's going to check out, but I've seen him check out in big football games. I saw him check out late in the Super Bowl. So I can't bet my money on that.
Guys, great NFL breakdown. We got 60 seconds, Ian Cameron coming up, college football and best bets, which we might get back into the NFL playoffs. Guys, 200 people watching right now, only 50 likes. Don't be a lurker out there. Please give us the thumbs up button. It helps us out a lot. Ian, 60 seconds. What, we got NHL. Look at this Vegas team, man. Up 20 units, 26-11 on the year. What do you got to say about them on the clock? We'll start it now, man.
Yeah, if the season were to end today, you'd be looking at a Tampa Bay Lightning, Vegas Golden Knights Stanley Cup final. I mean, you're looking at both of those teams for sure as the two best teams in the NHL right now. And it's amazing that on January 3rd, we're saying that about the Vegas Golden Knights, but it's time to really stop thinking about this team as an expansion franchise. They have clearly built a good roster. They clearly hired the right coach in Gerard Gallant, and they are absolutely buying in to the system that he's employing. This is a 4-line skating hockey team that can come at you in waves, that can get offensive contributions and goal scoring from anybody on the roster, anybody on the top 4 lines, a defensive group that there's no Norris Trophy winning defenseman on this team, but they play very good as a group, very good collectively. They've got their goaltending healthy again. Marc-Andre Fleury and Malcolm Subban forming a great 1-2 tandem. Vegas ain't going anywhere, it looks like, at this point. Tampa on the other side, they're very much the same team. 4 lines that they can roll out there that can all come at you in waves and score. A good, solid defense and a great goaltender right now in Andre Vasilevsky, who was phenomenal in shutting out the Leafs last night. Tampa and Vegas, they're the teams to beat right now as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, Ian. Ian,
Yeah,
I wanted to mention to you, I had a question on that. I took Vegas at 30-1 to win the NHL Stanley Cup. Do you think at some point they will come back to earth? I mean, I guess they're not really coming back to earth or anything. They've been they're a 1-season team, but I mean, will they get back to being that expansion? At some point, they're going to hit a wall, you would think, wouldn't they?
They're going to skid a little bit, at least at some point. They're not going to go 9-0-1 their next 10 games and the 10 games after that like they are right now. But I think they are going to make the playoffs. I'm confident now in saying that. And all that matters in the NHL, big man, seeding does not matter. This is not the NBA where you're lulled to sleep watching a 1-8 dopey conference quarterfinal matchup and the 8 seeds got no shot. This is the NHL now, where upsets can happen. where you can get an 8 seed beating a 1 seed. So all that matters in the NHL is get in the dance, get in the tournament, get in the playoffs, and anything can happen. Same thing with the Vegas Golden Knights. Regardless of where they finish, if they just get in, anything can happen. And they've clearly shown that they can beat good teams. They've beaten a slew of them this year.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good then because I have a pretty good number on that. So, all right, good. Very good.
As you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the first round of the NBA playoffs. I'm sure that's pretty clear right now.
Yeah, right.
Guys, it's national championship week. We got number 4 Alabama Crimson Tide versus number 3 Georgia Bulldogs. Looks like this is actually interesting because it was 4.5 last night. Now 5 Dimes is showing 4, bookmaker 4, and it looks like 4.5 other places. So Georgia might be taking some money, or at least some respected opinion in this one. 45 the total. Who wants to start us off? Jeff, you've been a little quiet lately. You want to start us off on how you're looking to bet the national championship, man?
Yeah, I like the under. I mean, as we mentioned yesterday on the national championship show, I would go under here. I mean, I know it seems kind of a square in a way, but I mean, you look at both these defenses. I think the defense we saw in the second half was a lot more of what we know and love with Georgia. I mean, the adjustments they made were just fantastic. And look, Jalen Hurts, you give him the credit, you give Alabama the credit, but I think a lot of their win the other night was obviously the motivation of momentum they had, but it was also the fact that they got some turnovers, they got that big interception, which is a big thing. And look, Alabama, you're not going to see this team score 45 points every game. That's not what they do. They grind you out. They play the football on the ground. They run the ball. Obviously, they're going to come up against a pretty good run defense here. I like what Jake Fromm, I saw out of him as well. But again, do we trust him to make plays on every single game? It's going to be a run-first football game. Both teams going to keep the ball on the ground, as we know. 2 good defenses, 2 teams with good special teams groups. I just see this game pretty low scoring, frankly. I don't have I'll be honest with you guys, as a college football fan and as a bettor, I don't have a ton of interest in this game, frankly. I'm kind of sick of the SEC, frankly. And I would much rather see a different matchup here. But outside of the SEC, I just don't think there's going to be a ton of national interest in this game, unfortunately. But hey, we got to give the SEC their credit. They continue to always make it to these levels. Should be a fun game for the SEC. But Drew, the truth of the matter is, I don't think the rest of the country cares too much.
No, I mean, hats off to the SEC. It's a great conference, a lot of talent in the conference. I'm an SEC guy. I went to an SEC school, and to tell you the truth, I don't like seeing it. So I don't, I'm kind of with you. It's a little disappointing to see an all SEC national championship. But Donnie, how are you looking to bet the national championship, man?
I like the football game overall because, watching football to me, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit older. I don't really enjoy, I mean, it's fun every once in a while to see a 45-38 game, but I enjoy the games like Clemson and Alabama played where everything's going to hinge on, can you get a first down? Don't turn the football over. Let's see if we can win the kicking game, the field position battle. I'm old school like that, so I like this football game, but it comes down to when you look at one team, what they really want to do, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs. They want to run the football. And it just seems like when teams that say, you know what, like Clemson tried to do, let's just get physical with you. We think we could be more physical than Alabama. Is anybody ever more physical than Alabama? You need a playmaker, a quarterback, try to extend the play. The whole Deshaun Watson last year, he was able to exploit a little bit of that Alabama defense because he's an ultimate playmaker. Fromm's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong. He's a freshman, but he's played like 13 games, so I can't really technically call him a freshman anymore. He's been in some big spots and won some big games. But when you try to say, what we do well, what you do well, it's hard for me to see, like, we're just going to go out and run the football and we're going to play field position against Alabama. That's what they want you to do. So, I mean, in this football game, Georgia is a valiant opponent. They're going to play hard. It's in Georgia. They're used to playing there. They're a good football team. But when the rubber meets the road, I want the team that's been there, done that before, is not going to seize up in the big moment, and a team that's going to try to run the football at us. That's what Alabama does.
So at this price point, are you looking to bet the Crimson Tide, Donnie?
It would be Crimson Tide or nothing for me. I like Georgia. Do they have a shot to win the football game? Sure they do. But, I mean, if lesson learned last week, I thought Clemson overall was one of the best defenses in the country last week, and Alabama came out there and planted their flag and said, not so fast. And again, Saban's won multiple national titles. He's been in these big environments. That's a home game, you want to say for Georgia. Why isn't it a home game for Alabama? They live and dominate in that building. What's going to be
They did get a couple. They did get a couple turnovers, though, to be honest. I mean, the offense.
That's what I mean, though. Yeah,
I was
talking defense. I wasn't even talking about the offense. I'm just saying defensively, Like, it's hard. Like, are you just going to run up and down the field on Alabama? Until somebody goes out there and just pummels them and pushes them around, I just can't go against Bama.
Yeah, no, I like the aspect you brought up of the mobile quarterback giving them issues. It seems like more of the kind of NFL style offenses don't have as much success against Nick Saban. Although it is only 7 days to prepare for both teams for this game. So
Yeah,
the
somebody's
extra
angry about the
preparation time.
7 game. Yeah, did you see Nick Saban's comments on that, Drew, too, as well? It made me laugh. Like, he's already, which he's already engaged in mode, the ready to win, where right after the game, 7 days isn't enough to get ready. And it's like he had to fly from, like, Australia back to Alabama. How long is the flight from Baton Rouge back to Alabama? What the hell is he complaining about?
Yeah,
That's
actually,
ridiculous.
he's
Yeah,
got
totally
the advantage
ridiculous. Yeah.
because Georgia had to fly
He's
cross
got to go from
country.
Los
He has
Angeles.
the
Exactly
advantage.
right. Yeah, and I was going to
Yeah,
bring
and then
that
let's
up.
just say where you're playing. Okay, you fly back to Alabama, and then you're going to play in Georgia. You're not playing back in Australia again. I have no idea what he's talking about right now either.
Yeah, and by the way, do not bring the home field advantage because it's in Georgia. Alabama does not have far to travel, and the tickets will be
They're
about
gonna have
split.
their-
That team
Yeah,
travels.
they're
That fan
nuts.
base
It's
travels.
a religion
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, don't bring that into your handicap, or at least I wouldn't. But Ian, anything to put on this national championship game?
No, Alabama football in that state's a religion. Like New York Yankee baseball is in the Bronx, like Montreal Canadian hockey is in Montreal. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, they're going to go and travel and support. That's all there is to it. So you're right, the home field advantage, okay, it's nice to have for Georgia, but it's not going to be anything significant. Let's put it that way in terms of this particular football game. I want to make a case for Georgia, but it's the once bitten, twice shy theory. I was on Clemson the other night, and they were overwhelmed by the Alabama team, particularly their defense. Jake Fromm. The one thing that's going to give Georgia a puncher's chance in this game is Jake Fromm was very good with his decision making in the semifinal against Oklahoma. No interceptions. That's something you like to see going up against this Alabama defense. Don't force it. But I just worry he's going to be a lot more one-dimensional here than he was against Oklahoma. I mean, this is a good run defense. Can Chubb and Michelle get going on the ground for Georgia against this Clemson or against this Alabama team? I'm not totally convinced of that. So my lean is Georgia, but after seeing what they did to Clemson, hearing Nick Saban talking about we were angry or them insinuating that we sort of needed to get back to our identity after what happened last year, this is sort of looking like a redemption tour right now for Alabama after losing in the national title game last year. And it's not something I'm interested in trying to go against one more time after getting my head caved in a little bit on Monday night.
Yeah, Georgia was 10-4 ATS on the year, so a moneymaker for sure for the Dogs. Guys, we got best bets coming in right now in conclusion of the show. Anybody else want to throw anything out national championship betting wise before we move on?
I just, by the way, halftime of the national title game, Drew, are we going to have the chest pass Dr. Pepper again to root for or no?
God, that was kind of wild. I hope so.
Off topic on that. I don't mind it, but can we get back to you have to actually throw the football like you're throwing a football? How did they let that get out of the way where you don't sign the paper and say you can't make a chest basketball pass? Is the whole point of it.
Don't you know? It's a shot put. It's a shot put throw, Donnie. You didn't know that? You didn't get the memo?
Phillip Rivers would be awesome at that game. Yeah, no, he'd be great at it.
Put it behind your ear, and there you go.
It's unbelievable. They let it's funny how you get off topic on that, but that really annoys me. The chest pass, Dr. Pepper pass. Right.
I don't know why you get picked for that. The guys that can't throw, why don't you just go to your buddy hey, let's split the profits, man. You can slang it around. I've never understood that. But guys, let's get into to best bets. We can go right around the horn real quick, I guess. Or actually, we're running out of time, so we got to bring up college basketball in some form or fashion. We got to give
running
big man
out of time. We go over. We don't even go over college basketball. We sit on the NFL for 8
college
hours.
basketball.
Come on, Drew.
Yeah.
Killing me. Yeah, well,
it is.
That's where the money's
the
at.
NFL playoffs.
Let's get into something quickly about CBB. Let's do 60 seconds of CBB. Let's go. Let's do it.
No, you can get more than 60 seconds, Jeff. Man, take the floor for a little bit.
Well, no, listen. I mean, I think the big thing is college basketball is where the money is. I mean, we can try to sit around and try to find angles in 4 NFL games, but where everyone else is betting. But hey, why not just go to the college hoops card where you can find tons of value every night? The big problem going forward is you got to feel bad for Notre Dame. I know, they always seem to come up just short. And you look at this year, It's not going to be any easier. Bonzi Colson is one of the most dynamic players in the country. I mean, he's so good on all levels, and now you're not going to have him for 2 months. A completely horrible thing to happen for Notre Dame. You got to feel bad for them, and that means more Duke and more North Carolina and more of those teams. You ever notice their star players don't ever get injured? Sucks to be, but it's interesting though, guys. A lot of the teams, you look at the top, let's say 10 teams in the country vying for the title. I think there's some kind of issue for each of these teams. It'd be interesting to see who kind of gets it going. I don't think Michigan State's the number one team in the country. That's an interesting point. But don't forget about college hoops. That's all we'll say. Don't forget about it, because at some point there's not going to be any football to talk about anymore, guys. So you're going to have to make sure you know what you're talking about in college hoops. Make sure you do your homework.
And I mean, let's give it its due. You bring up Bonzi Colson's injury here, big man, and finding change in a sport like college basketball is huge to get an advantage on the other side of the counter. How are you looking to bet Notre Dame? Just straight fade them, maybe unders, overs? How are you looking to bet the
I mean,
Irish?
I'm not sure that I'm going to be looking to bet them at all. I mean, when you lose a guy like Colson, I mean, it's like Creighton last year with Maurice Watson. I mean, he was, 40% of that scoring output, 40% of their possessions. I mean, you can't lose a player like Bonzi Colson and expect your team. This is the kind of guy that your team can go from good to just very average. I'm going to be looking to not really get involved with them at all. There are 350 other teams that I can look at until I can kind of see where they go. I mean, it's got to motivationally be pretty upsetting. I mean, he's a probably top 7 player in the country overall. So that's a huge loss. 21 points a game, over 10 rebounds. He's a dynamic guy that's very difficult to replace.
Big man, you bring up a great point, man. But college basketball is making some money. Let's give it its proper due. We can go through best bets quickly. What about Alabama Vandy last night, man? You called it on our show yesterday. You had no interest in the Alabama side. What did you see in that game? Anything to take forward?
Well, I think what I saw in Alabama is they're a team that they're very difficult to back because they don't do some of the little things. They're not particularly good on the road. They have a young point guard who, look, Colin Sexton's a fantastic player, but he's not all they have. They need others to step up. And the concern you have with them is they're just not very good from the foul line. I mean, they're only shooting about 68%, 67%. It seems to be a bugaboo that they have a lot in games. It almost came to a head against Rhode Island this year, last night. You got to be able to win on the road. I mean, you can't play every game at home. When you get into the tournament, you're going to have to go and win on the road. And you look at last night. I mean, free throws weren't a problem. It's just Vanderbilt. You look at them. You can't look at a non-conference schedule and see a team that's maybe 5-6 or 5-8 and say, well, I'm just going to bet against them. They're 5-8. Vanderbilt had a lot of tough luck. They played a lot of high-level teams. Don't let the non-conference schedule. Don't look at that and just say, oh well, this team's 9-1. I got to back them. A team like Georgetown, they're a perfect example. They've had a joke of a non-conference schedule, and they're going to get humbled in the Big East. Vanderbilt's kind of the other way around. I thought they had a pretty tough out of conference schedule, and Bryce Drew's a great coach. That's a tough place to play. That's a place where it's the SEC. You got to go and be tough and try to win games. And Vanderbilt's not going to just go away. There's a tough game every night in the SEC, and Alabama's going to learn how to win on the road.
And BMOC, you bring up the SEC. What about Bruce Pearl going into Knoxville, catching the win by 10 points? What are you taking from that one?
Yeah.
Impressive,
Well, how about
very
that?
impressive.
And they've done it without their 2 best players, Purefoy and Wiley, who are out for eligibility. Imagine if they were there. Look, Auburn is a team that I think people need to get awake with here and look at the fact that what they do. I mean, they're not one of these teams that struggle to score. Or they do, one thing good and a couple things bad. They do everything well. They're good on the block. They can score. They're good from the foul line. They make their 3-point shots. They're athletic. They're just, and Pearl's a good I think he's a good coach deep down. He's kind of a weird guy. He's had some weird issues in his career, but overall, the players like him. And going into Tennessee and beating them the way they did. I mean, Tennessee's a nationally ranked team. Auburn should get votes next week to get into the top 25. SEC's good, and the Auburn Tigers are picking up kind of where the football team left off, not being able to perform. This basketball team is playing well, and they do a lot of good things well. So as an underdog, they'd be a team you want to look at. They do a lot of things that are going to keep you around a basketball game, making free throws, making 3-point shots. They're pretty good on the boards. I like Auburn a lot.
And BMOC, just real quick, anything catching your eye tonight? I know you got the show later, but just real quick, anything on tonight's
Yeah,
card?
I think one piece of business you want to keep your eye on is LaSalle, the Explorers. They're heading on the road to take on Rhode Island. Rhode Island, a team that really is a freight train right now. They look like the favorite in the A10. LaSalle going to be possibly without their best player, B.J. Johnson. If he doesn't play, it's going to be very difficult for LaSalle in this game. I mean, he's a guy that really anchors that team. This is only a team that scores about 70 points a game to begin with. Now you're going to be possibly without your best player. Going on the road to Rhode Island, a team that plays ferocious defense, that might not be a good omen for LaSalle. But there's some interesting games tonight for sure. We'll try to find some value. You got some Missouri Valley tonight. Notre Dame's in action. They might be a team worth looking at and betting against tonight. NC State, if they can hit some jump shots like they did against Penn State, that could be a game you could see NC State winning outright. But keep your eye on some things as we. It's early still though.
All right, guys, up against it time-wise. We'll go right around the horn real quick. Best bets. Donnie Rightside, find him on Twitter at RightSideVP. Donnie, what are you looking best bet-wise?
Yeah, let's go to the NFL. We're going to stick instead of going with the side, with a lot of these are inflated, as you've seen, -9s, -7, -6.5. We're going to keep it simple here. 107, 108, division battle. Talked about it earlier today. The third time these teams will match up in a playoff atmosphere here. Not really impressed with how Carolina can move the football in that environment. I think they'll come up and play some defense. I think New Orleans going to lean on their running game like they've always done. I'm going to sit on the under. So right now we're looking at Bet Online under 48.5 in that football game. I'll sit on that line. There are some 49s out there, but we'll go right with the 48.5. I'm going to lean under in that football game in the battle of the NFC South.
All right, so Saints Falcons under 48.5. Ian Cameron, find him on Twitter at Babano. His work at sportsmemo.com. Ian, real quick, best bet for you?
Yeah, let's go college basketball tonight. I'm going in that route for best bet. Let's take a look at a team that I think is very well coached. It's a Big Ten matchup here. I think they're starting to turn things around a little bit, get things going in a positive direction. I'm going to look at Brad Underwood and his Illinois Fighting Illini +7.5 tonight against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I'm not liking the trending direction of this Minnesota team down as of late. They have not played some of their better basketball of late. They've been absolutely miserable as a home favorite. Really dreadful, to be honest with you. Laying points of any kind. You look at them as a favorite the last 5 times they've been favored. 1-4 against the spread those last 5 games. Illinois, it's going to take them time. It's going to take Underwood time to get his recruits, get his players in there. But we're seeing this team competitive against some of the better teams they've played. They only lost by 7 on the road at UNLV. They only lost by 4 against Northwestern in overtime. Maryland, a 1-point loss in overtime. So even though they're 0-2 in Big Ten play, Maryland overtime loss, Northwestern overtime loss. They were in both games. A nice win for them recently on a neutral court against that very good Missouri Tigers team, 70-64, winning outright as an underdog. Illinois is a better free throw shooting team than Illinois. They've played better defensively the last 5 games than Minnesota has. I think they're live in this basketball game tonight. I think they, once again, like they've done recently against some better competition, they take the games down to the wire. I think they do that again tonight against a Minnesota team that's not playing now the way they were in early November, mid-November. Not quite the same Gophers team for Richard Pitino right now. I think Illinois hangs. Give me the Fighting Illini to fight for me tonight. +7.5. That'll be my best bet.
BMOC, best bet for you, man?
Yeah, real quick. I'm going to go Premier League, one game today. Big game. Chelsea, Arsenal, battle for London, the London Derby here. I'm going to go with Chelsea Football Club on the road against Arsenal. Arsenal, guys, important to note, if you're betting the Premier League right now, transfer window is getting going here. That means people are going to be moving. Arsenal Football Club has a major issue right now. Alexis Sanchez wants a move. He wants to leave Arsenal. Mesut Ozil's out today. Mesut Ozil's among the best midfielders that they have. They're really lacking in the midfield without Mesut Ozil. He can't play today. That means they're going to have a young kid come in, a kid that might not be able to get Alexis Sanchez the ball, Lacazette the ball. That's a concern against Chelsea here. I just don't like Arsenal Football Club right now with some of the internal problems they have, people wanting to leave the club. Who knows what they're going to do. I think Chelsea gets a big win today at the Emirates. Arsenal's been dominating at home, but Chelsea is a good football team. I think they go in and get the job done today. I'll go 2-1 Chelsea. Give me them +150.
All right, BMOC on Chelsea plus 150, Ian on Illinois plus 7.5 in college hoops, Donnie on the under in the Saints Falcons game of 48.5. I'll cap it off. Big Man brought it up earlier with LaSalle. I don't think they're a very deep team. The injury as well. Rhode Island minus 11.5 on SBR odds right now. Donnie right side, Ian Cameron, Jeff Nadeau. I'm Drew Martin. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone. Thanks.